We have all seen the map of the world 1,000 times. But what if this cat playing with Australia isn't actually a cat at all? And Russia is not as huge as we all think? Let's figure it out. This is the famous Flemish cartographer and geographer Gerard Kramer, aka Gerard Mercator in the Latin version. It was he who first used the conformal cylindrical projection when compiling a navigation map of the world on 18 sheets in 1569. How did this projection come about? In simple words, the cartographer made cuts on the surface of the globe from the north and from the south and laid it in this form on a plane. Then I drew a picture between the cuts. As a result, the northern and southern regions were greatly stretched, while the territories on the equator remained the same size. And now let's continue. And open the world map from Google. It is quite obvious that Russia is about twice bigger and wider than Africa. But in fact, Africa is bigger than Russia in width by about 500 kilometers. So, Russia is great, but Africa is still wider. The same principle applies to all other countries. Most modern maps do not reflect real sizes and distances if they are north and south of the equator. That is, the lands that are located in the northern and southern hemispheres. In reality, less than it appears on the maps in the Mercator projection, created over the past few centuries. How do you like this global conspiracy? Moreover, the northern regions are especially distorted. And this distortion is the greater, the further north the territories are located. Another great example is Greenland. Look how big she is. This area can fit 2 Australia. Greenland is visually even a little larger than Africa. Then why are Australia and Africa continents, while Greenland is considered an island? Or, for example, India and Mongolia almost the same size. But in fact, India is more than twice the bigger of Mongolia. And here is what Canada looks like in reality, for example, compared to Brazil. But if the Mercator projection does not reflect the real state of affairs, how are things with other projections? Perhaps among them there is the most realistic. After all, someone had to guess how to transfer objects and distances from the surface of the planet onto a plane without distortion. For example, equidistant map projection. It is characterized by simple geometry while maintaining distances along the equator and all meridians. But here, too, there is a mess with size and even shape. And this is the equal area cylindrical projection by Johann Lambert, developed in 1772. The northern regions here are unrealistically flattened. Map projection by James Gall and Arno Peters, created in the mid-19th century. 2 flattened north and equator elongated. Cylindrical projection of Miller in 1942. Already better, but again we see a huge Greenland and a rather compressed north. And what is this anyway? It seems that during the printing of the card on the printer, the paper jammed. This is what the central cylindrical projection looks like. But these are not all options. There are also so-called cylindrical projections. For example, the Eckert projection. Gouda. Kavraisky. Wagner. By the way, not a bad option, only Antarctica is too big compared to the real size and also somewhat flattened north. Conic projections do not reflect the situation in the lower part of the southern hemisphere, so this option is not suitable. Pseudo-conical, closer to the truth. But the forms, for example, of Australia and both Americas are too strongly distorted. There are also azimuthal map projections. They are also closer to the truth, but again Australia and other territories located on the equator suffered a lot. By the way, these cards were used by aircraft pilots until the middle of the 20th century. Of particular interest are polyhedral map projections. For example, the so-called butterfly by Bernard Cahill. And this version of his butterfly, created in 1915, was used for intercontinental flights, which indicates the real distances between the main objects on the map. Here, the shapes of the continents and countries are not distorted, and the sizes, in principle, are the same. Or here is another similar card, the butterfly by Steve Waterman. As you can see, the deformation is insignificant. Agree, this is much more realistic than the Mercator projection, where the northern regions are 2 to 3 times larger than they actually are. And on this physical political map of 2012, created in the Waterman projection, Antarctica was taken out separately. Apparently, this cartographic projection is one of the most realistic as it most fully reflects the real sizes, shapes and distances. With world maps, There is another interesting feature that literally changes the look of people from different countries and regions. Look, in Russia the vertical axis of the world passes through Moscow. And on the world map for Europe, the vertical axis of the world passes through London. As for the Russian map, here both Americas and Australia are on the periphery of the world, and the Pacific Ocean is not perceived as an integral space. And here is the world map for the USA. This is for China. And this card traditionally becomes an occasion for jokes. There is a general stereotype that what is above dominates, and what is below is in a subordinate position. The Australians not only draw the vertical axis of the world through their mainland, they also place it on top of all others, turning the map 180 degrees. But maybe there is a continent on our planet that has not yet been mapped. Yes, imagine there is one. It is this continent that should be placed in the center of all maps of the world. Maybe then we would tackle this problem more resolutely. Great Pacific Garbage Patch, or Eastern Garbage Continent. This is the name of a giant accumulation of anthropogenic debris in the northern part of the Pacific Ocean, where giant deposits of plastic and other waste are concentrated. According to various estimates, there are more than 100 million tons of garbage in this area. Last year, researchers quantified debris in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and found that they underestimated its size. According to new calculations, it covers an area of about 1.6 million square kilometers, which is slightly larger than the Tumen region. Of course, the garbage continent does not look like a huge dump that you can run around, or like a continent with mountains of garbage on which you can build houses and roads. It is not visible from space. There are no garbage islands. It's just some sort of plastic soup floating in the ocean. By the way, many of you drink this soup every day. A team of scientists from McGill University in Canada found that brewing a plastic tea bag at 95 degrees Celsius water releases about 10 billion microplastic particles, tiny pieces of polymers ranging in size from 100 nanometers to 5 millimeters. And all this in one cup. Several orders of magnitude more than it was found in other foods or drinks. The plastic particles matched the material of the tea bag, which confirms that the microplastic appeared in the water during the brewing process. To test the potential toxicity of microplastic particles released from plastic tea bags, the resulting decoction was tested on Daphnia. The plastic particles did not kill the Daphnia, but they did cause significant behavioral and malformations. The conclusion is sad and obvious to any sane person. Surprisingly, there is not a single global project that would work on this problem. Everything that is being done, now by the efforts of lone enthusiasts, is just a drop in the ocean. In May 2019, the 25-day Kasei expedition fished out 40 tons of plastic trash project in the region, including 5 tons of fishing nets, which are especially dangerous for marine animals. It sounds great, but just think about it, 40 tons out of 100 million, these are 100,000ths of a percent. Maybe we shouldn't wait for someone to save us all in bulk. Or when the government gets smarter. It is not so difficult to think about the fate of a discarded thing. Or, for example, take a reusable bag instead of a package to the store. Many of us have learned to keep our body and home clean. Cleaning up the planet should be the logical next step. Maybe you shouldn't start with that? Write your thoughts in the comments, because if we don't start changing our future, then there will always be those who want to do it for us. See you soon on the channel. Don't forget to subscribe. The main material was translated from the YouTube channel Kramola.